Welcome back to our last panel for the day. Nonetheless, it might be one of the most interesting ones. The term unicorn was coined to describe private companies that have achieved a post-money valuation of 1 billion or more US. Originally, these companies were scarce, magical, and elusive. So we're going to ask the question, should this still be the measure of success? Or is there another way? So in the panel Building Unicorns with Global Impact, we have some amazing panelists. We have Rolf Kjærgaard, CEO of Vækstfonden. We have Dr. Fabian Heilemann in Leaders for Climate Action. Michael Gronager, CEO Chainalysis. And we hope that we'll be joined by Rune, CEO of Nordic API Gateway. I would like to leave over to you, Camilla Rygaard-Hjalsted, the CEO of Digital Hub Denmark, and look forward to a fantastic panel with you.
Thank you so much. We've been looking forward to this, and welcome to Building Unicorns with Global Impact. Good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening to everyone out there, and thank you for listening in. And of course, very big thanks to Singapore FinTech Festival and our local Copenhagen FinTech for this amazing event. Yes, as was mentioned, my name is Camilla Rygaard-Hjalsted. I'm the CEO of Digital Hub Denmark. It's a Danish public-private initiative to support tech startups in Denmark with talent, with customers, and with capital. And today's panel is a 45-minute long session, and it is focused on how, if at all, unicorns can be seen as a vehicle for solving some of the most pressing global challenges. So can we build unicorns with global impact? And if so, are we doing that in Europe? And as has just been mentioned, unicorns describe these companies that have a valuation of $1 billion US or more. And you could ask, are these unicorns exactly the way to do it? Because, of course, exponential scaling is critical. And this is what investors want. So if we want to tackle big issues and we want to replicate unicorn formation, maybe we need to learn from the best and the brightest. And this is why we put together such a fine panel today for you to learn how to do it and also discuss, is it indeed the way forward? Before I introduce the fine panelists, I'm going to give you a little bit of the process, so hang on here. We will have each panelist giving their 3-minute intro of themselves and their company. I'm going to give you a round of questions to kickstart the discussion, but it's all about you and not so much about me, so I'm going to see what we can steer up of discussion. And if you have any questions out there, audience, please post them, and I'll do my best to parallel process and put in some of the questions alongside. And then, of course, we'll end up saying, okay, what does the future hold for impact companies? And everyone can chip in because we don't know this yet. So in the studio, I have, as we just heard, CEO of Vækstfonden, Kjærgaard, Leaders for Climate Action, Dr. Fabian Heilemann, CEO and co-founder for Nordic API Gateway, Rune, when he shows up. And I think we should just get started now. So I'm going to ask Rolf, can you take the first 3 minutes and give us your story, please?
Thank you, Camilla, and thank you to the organizing group behind this conference for having the opportunity to speak to you all, and thank you for being part of this distinguished panel, which I've been looking forward to very much. Personally, my name is Rolf Kjærgaard. I'm CEO of Vækstfonden, and we're all about impact investing. Essentially, we've been doing that for almost 30 years now, investing for impact. Founded by the Danish government back in 1992. Our role, our mission is to make a difference, to create an impact throughout Danish society by working with Danish companies. Small companies, medium-sized companies, large companies, new companies, mature companies, all throughout the Danish territory. And the way we do this is by providing funding. almost not almost always in partnership with private investors, private banks, private individuals. Everything we do in close collaboration with the private market agents. And we do that in order to build out the local ecosystem, to make sure that we have available to all companies, regardless of stages, various types of capital, whether it's from business angels or VCs or private equity or pension funds or banks or mortgage institutions or what have you, all throughout the ecosystem. In order for it to be long-term viable and seamlessly integrated, we need to have all these different players. And equally important, we need for our local ecosystem to be closely interconnected with other local ecosystems around the world, close by throughout the Nordic region, all throughout Europe, and across the globe. That's what we're all about. And we're almost 300 people doing this. And for the past many years, we've been looking to take this to the next level, investing under an investment hypothesis, which says that the companies of the future will be sustainable. A lot of companies are being formed in a sustainable way, providing and producing sustainable products in sustainable ways with sustainable business models. Others still need to come around to it, but we believe strongly that unless you as a company come around to face the fact that in the future companies have to be sustainable or they will be wiped out by the rivals who are, no matter the industry, no matter the geographical market, unless you come around to that, you won't be around in the future. Not to sound dystopian, but to sound optimistic, because we are greatly positioned to deliver on that. And building great companies, including large, scalable companies, such as unicorns, is part of that solution. That's what we're all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Rolf. And we are leaving you at an optimistic point and moving directly over to Fabian, please. Fabian, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Camilla, and thanks to the SFF team for having me tonight. Essentially, you know, my journey has started 20 years ago in teenage years as an entrepreneur and evolved into what you would call kind of a serial entrepreneurial career that I had focused jointly with my brother already back in 2007, 2008 on the technology industry. And the last company which I still led as CEO, we sold that to Google back in 2011. That was a B2C marketplace, not yet for impact or purpose, but just a kind of a traditional B2C. And ever since I moved on, so I'm now I switched sides. So 9 years I'm now on the investor side of the table. 3 years as an angel or super angel investor, where I built my own boutique, and then for the past 6 years, I'm one of the general partners and co-owners of Earlybird, which is a pan-European early-stage VC, 60 active portfolio companies across Europe, and about 1.5 billion in assets under management. So how does that relate to impact and also to Leaders for Climate Action? Because here today, I'm not as a partner of Earlybird, but I'm here as a co-founder of our climate charity, Leaders for Climate Action. Essentially, 5 years ago, 2015-ish, my brother and I, and he stayed on the entrepreneurial side of the table. He's then for the past 5 years been CEO of one of Europe's leading logistics technology companies called Forto. My brother and I, who always basically managed our assets jointly and had a lot of also political conversations over time around our private investment strategy and how it would relate to environmental and social impact and which equities to own and how to invest in the real estate sector, affordable housing, and so on and so forth. So for us, it was a journey of becoming more and more clear about the desire of using our assets. And I mean not only financial assets, but also the voice we had in the German or partially also European tech ecosystem, and the power to design that we have over the organizations that we lead and influencing the companies in which we invest, where at Earlybird is currently 13,000 people on the payroll in our portfolio, how we could use these assets in order to basically promote environmental sustainability, but also social equality to a greater and also to a more intentional degree. And ultimately, you know, what started as private change in lifestyle and augmenting our strategy in our private investing, it then basically crystallized in the foundation 2 years ago of Leaders for Climate Action, where we said, let's basically take this idea after we had after we had measured and reduced the climate footprints and offset the residuals in our own companies, let's take this idea to the next level. And let's take these frameworks, which we had built for ourselves, let's make them accessible to the European tech ecosystem. And this is exactly the mission of Leaders for Climate Action. So basically giving all of those entrepreneurs out there who are technically already conscious and aware of the environmental or of the environment as a stakeholder to their business, giving them the manuals, giving them the practical frameworks and advice in order to take action and measure the results of that.
We'll stop it there, Fabian. Thank you very much. That's super interesting. And Michael, let's hear your stories.
Yeah, thanks for inviting for the panel. Great pleasure to talk to you all, and looking forward to some of the discussions. I'm promised not to agree to everything. So just a little bit background what Chainalysis is doing and how we are looking at the world and how we see impact and so on. So like the last 50 years have really been worldwide have been about globalization. We are starting to like collaborate way more across different countries. We are buying and selling goods from different countries and basically eradicated poverty. At least like when I was a kid, poverty was a big thing, and today it's still a big thing for those it impacts, but the number of people impacted have gone down over time. Largely because of globalizations, the borders have come down and all that. That's amazing. So 25 years ago, we invented a communication platform that we could all use. The internet was suddenly a thing. It started to grow, become bigger and bigger, and basically enabled or kind of validated that the global world could now talk to each other. Huge impact, like amazing abilities that we are using right now. Otherwise, we would not attend a conference in Singapore, sitting in Germany, in New York, and in Denmark, and all talking to each other and having people listening in from all over the world. So that's amazing, and amazing accomplishment. What is the next step on this journey? Still up towards globalization, towards one world. It's basically ensuring that we have one currency, one common financial system that we can all use, and that brings down borders, where it's not about you having the right passport for you to have access to a bank account, of you to be able to wire money, for you to participate in investment schemes and so on. Everyone will have access. So how do we facilitate that? So Bitcoin and like the cryptocurrency world was invented around almost 12 years ago now. And one of the core features, so I'm one of the early people that got into crypto back in 2011. So when everything was really, really young. And when I looked at the cryptocurrency community, there's a lot of enthusiasm around it. But one of the core features that were not really solved and not really well understood by the crypto community back then were that all the governments worldwide, they're kind of the owners and the core stakeholders in a financial system. And if it's a global financial system, they're all stakeholders in that. So to ensure that they have full buy-in, that this is actually not just a new way, but also a more safe way and more secure way to conduct transaction, and enabling way more people to do that. So that's the problem that Chainalysis was set out to solve. And we've been doing that over the last 5-6 years. Today, we work with 30 governments worldwide. A lot of over 100 public sector institutions worldwide are customers of ours. We have more than 250 private sector customers. Most of those are transacting on the blockchain. Others of those want to transact on the blockchain. But anything that happens on the blockchain is stuff that impact those. And we've seen like tremendous growth in terms of like traction for what we are building and basically enabling this new ecosystem to evolve. So like today, yeah, we hit the unicorn status. What was that, a few months ago? So we can check that box now, and happy to comment on that when we get into the discussions.
Thank you so much, Michael. And I wish I had a flag I could sort of celebrate. That's great. Now let's get dig into the discussion. And of course, missing out on Rune, I'm hoping he shows up. I'm going to start with you, Fabian. And for new viewers, I'm going to say welcome to Building of Unicorns with Global Impact. And I'm going to repeat some of what was said in the beginning, namely that the term unicorn was coined by Eileen Lee of Kjærgaard Ventures. And it describes a private company that has a post-money valuation of $1 billion or more. And now, Fabian, do you think that this is a measure of Heilemann? You there? Excellent.
Hi.
We'll get back to you. Do you think, Fabian, that it is still a measure of success in light of what we're talking about today, namely global impact, or is there another way? What's your take on that, Fabian? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Camilla. So my take, and it has shaped over time, but my take is that in the face of both the environmental climate crisis, but also in the face of ever-increasing social inequality on a global scale, the term unicorn, in order to simply describe the financial metric, is not sufficient anymore to gauge the overall success of an enterprise if we see it as not only liable or catering to the needs of their financial stakeholders or financial investors, but if we see it also at the same time as an organism embedded into a broader stakeholder landscape. And therefore, my take on basically the term or the usage of the term of unicorn and its future augmentation is to basically expand the definition and to add to the financial aspect of the unicorn definition also social and environmental impact KPIs. So in that respect, I'm not arguing for letting go of it, but I'm arguing for going beyond it and for adding to it.
Perfect, Fabian. And now, Rune, thank you for showing up here, and we are delighted to have you. I'm going to give you 1 minute, so condense your speech into 1 minute, and then you go up and talk about pros and cons, please. What's your story, Rune?
Okay, I'm Rune, the CEO of a company called Nordic API Gateway. It's a company I built back in 2010, focusing on somewhat similar stuff than Chainalysis and Michael is doing, but from a different angle, which is like the financial perspectives in terms of how to model a digital world of finance when everything was still being done by brick and mortar, right? And today we run this open banking infrastructure platform that has a lot of tier 1 banks as customers, a lot of accounting systems and so forth. And the goal that we are trying to achieve is actually to follow the money anywhere. So at some point of time, we would probably also be looking into blockchain when those areas mature more and more. I think that the most interesting part right now is probably how banking itself will transform over the years to come. And I think there's a lot of interesting projects out there for that. And also a lot of unicorns, as the term is right now, that is doing interesting stuff in that market.
And did you answer the question, what are the pros and what are the cons?
No, I actually think I very much agree to Fabian and that we need to move past the term unicorn. In reality, if you look at unicorn, it's a fairy tale animal, right? It's not even an existing animal that we're talking about here. It's so in that sense, probably a butterfly is something that is a transformative being that is able to transfer itself, despite being very little, across the blue ocean would probably be much better in terms of also butterflies being able to build a storm in Japan from using its wings in California. Like, this is transformation to me, and it's the transformative power is not measured by your EV, to be honest, and I think that's the issue. But if you look at the unicorns that are really, really interesting and perhaps also very impactful at the moment, there is actually VC-driven unicorns that are hugely successful. Also, if you look in Latin America, we have Nubank there, one of the biggest challenger banks in the world, that grew from 0 customers to 20 million customers in less than 4 years. And they aim at 100 million customers. And what they do is actually give banking to the unbanked and give credit lines to the unbanked very fast, very efficient, making the societies there grow to a significant rate in terms of buying power and spending power and so forth. And I think that's impact, right? Where if you look at the cons in terms of unicorn statuses, it's probably, and probably a lot of guys will hate me for saying this, but if you look at Voi or Uber, I really love the ideas behind those companies, but I think they ended up being somewhat thwarted by the sheer amount of capital that was injected to these companies, bringing them past the unicorn status. And they spend so much money on no longer like executing on a vision, but more executing on top of a unique economic scheme that is actually hurting the case they were set out to solve. And so I think, like, to me, Voi is these scooter wheels, right, that are magically dropped from heavens into cities and then just floating around everywhere. And they have a transformative power, but like spending no kind of effort on trying to get into how does it work in a society like Denmark or society like the US, and then kind of like conform to the structures in those societies is probably what is missing in that sense. It becomes too much a spreadsheet logic.
Thank you, Rune. I love this because we're going to get back to this, Rune, for sure when we talk to Michael in just a minute. But Rolf, in the meantime, can you tell us if there's a special breeding ground for high-impact startups, because that's how it starts in the Nordics and in Europe, or are we actually losing to the North American and Asian continents? Maybe you can give some examples from your own work in the Danish State's investment fund, the Vækstfonden, from successful Danish impact corporations.
I'll try. First off, I want to share with you all our analysis, which actually boils down to 2 components. One is that as a region, whether it's Denmark or the Nordics or all of Europe, we face both a challenge and a huge opportunity. Now, speaking to the challenge first, I think it's becoming clearer and clearer to everyone throughout the European investor community that we're really great at founding companies and funding them early on, taking them all the way through the seed and Series A stages. But once we hit the Series B round level and onwards, it becomes more difficult to find local capital, and that goes for pretty much all of Europe. Now, there's a lot of effort being mobilized toward remedying that constraint on company growth as a region. We're seeing VCs creating growth funds on top, opportunity funds on top. We're seeing family offices entering that space, and we're seeing governments piling in all throughout Europe, including in Denmark, providing mandates to institutions such as our own at Vækstfonden, with a dedicated focus to supplying more capital to be readily accessible to homegrown European companies once they reach that Series B, Series C stage, so that we can lead those investor rounds and not leave it up to outside investors, and thus jeopardize the continuous expansion of these companies as European companies, where we've seen in the past some have left Europe and set up shop somewhere else. And But on the opportunity side, when it comes to impact and building impactful companies, companies that are driven, such as you're talking about, Rune, by this great vision to really make a difference, to transform and change the world, to become a better place. We have an excellent breeding ground for that, and we have a legacy to count toward that. When we go back and see some of the sustainable technologies, the green technologies, the whole clean tech space, a lot of those have come out of Europe, and I'm constantly reminded of this when I travel outside of Europe. I talk to people in Silicon Valley, for instance, and we're all talking about technology. They're not so much talking about sustainability and how to put technology to use toward driving sustainability, whereas we are as a region in Europe, and we have the industries and we have the technologies to show for that, and we've built the energy sector. When you talk about wind turbines, onshore, offshore, when you talk about biogas, when you talk about power to X, there are multiple companies within our portfolio and throughout at Vækstfonden that are building great products, great technologies, and great solutions that carry great promise for the world as we turn those companies into highly scalable businesses that can roll out globally and really transform the world to make it sustainable.
All right, thank you. That's very optimistic, Rolf. And that's why we go all the way to Michael now, because is it naive, Michael, to think Europe can have a voice in building tomorrow's unicorns? And why? And what I'm looking at is, why don't we see the platform economy prevailing in Europe? Is it because we don't understand what it takes to create and grow and replicate these type of companies? Or is it indeed the capital, as we just heard Rolf advocate? What is your take?
So now I'm going to fire at everyone, because that makes it much more fun. So you get a bit your parades up. But basically, so what I would say here is that I've been in many conferences in the US, and what the US is here in the US, we always talk about how Europe is winning, how Asia is running away from us. As soon as I sit in Europe, we all talk about how good we are in Europe. That's complacency, and that's a very, very core part of the lack of confidence in Europe and the lack of growth. I would also say, yes, unicorn status matter. $10 billion matters. If what you mentioned, Fabian, like if sustainability, if all of these things actually have value, it will end up being part of the value of the company. You don't need 2 spreadsheets to do that. You can do it in one. These are all important things. It's just there. And I would again say, like on the European, like what are we doing for sustainability? I'm just commenting on that one. Sustainability, you look at a Silicon Valley company, Tesla, they're probably doing more for sustainability than any company worldwide. And the biggest number of solar panels being installed is not in Europe, that's in China. So I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of things outside, and I don't like to be complacent. I'm European as well. I'm kind of also an American, but I wear both hats. But I would still say I don't like the complacency that I see in Europe around, we are doing good, it's all fine, we should just be happy. We shouldn't. We should panic because the rest of the world is running away. So that's the mindset. Okay, so why don't we see more unicorns in Europe, and why is this not happening? It's there's many reasons around that. So I would say for example, I have 2 companies behind me. There's Kraken. I left that in 2014 to found Chainalysis. Kraken is a unicorn today. We're a unicorn today. It's like, why does that happen in the US? I would say there's 2 things. Access to capital, that's one of them. You simply need to be able to have access to capital, and capital means people who care about the money. So it's actually someone that has skin in the game, and that means that this needs to be private investors. They're the best because they actually care about it. They want this to grow, and they'll push you as hard as they can to make this happen because they want you to succeed in your vision. So I think that's a core part of that, the access to capital. Once the company grows, and that was like well coined by you, Rolf, basically saying like up to Series A works pretty well. Series B stage companies, they're running away. And why are they doing that? So that's access to talent. And talent is actually extremely scarce, because if we're hiring right now, chief marketing officer role, can I find that person in Denmark? Absolutely not. Can I find them in Europe? Probably not. Can I find them on the East Coast? Hardly. Can I find them on the West Coast in the US? Yes. It's really, really hard to find talent on that level, because what I'm looking for is someone that's been part of building a company and running a marketing department of, say, a revenue machine that's building more than 100 million a year, 200 million a year, and been through that process. And it's not okay to just run it from one of the big corporations. We want to have someone that's seen the growth, 100% growth year over year, and seen that over time, and been number one or number two to make that happen. There's only a short list. There might be 500 potential candidates. 400 of them are to reach to work today. So now we are down to 100, and most of them are on the West Coast. So it's really, really hard. And that talent doesn't exist in Europe. And it means that you can't hire them there. And it just means that as soon as you cross the Series B stage, it becomes extremely hard to build the companies from there. And that's just a fact. And the only thing that solves that is time. Just waiting and ensuring that, like, over time, one or more, and slowly this will emerge and it will happen. But it's not something we can solve on a short term. And I have to say, wearing my globalist hat, basically saying, I don't care. I don't care as an entrepreneur, and I don't care about, like, as a world citizen. Wealth will be created as long as that wealth is, like, accessible to the entire world. Then where it happens, I don't care about that.
All right, Michael, we got it. So I was looking whether there were questions from the audience, and I'm going to say to you out there, please ask us questions. Please fire, because we want this to be live. And if I see them, I'll put them into the stream of questions here. Now, while the existence of impact unicorns might be pivotal to solving these global challenges, we've kind of discussed, or at least started discussing, how to create them and grow them and replicate them. As we've heard, there's probably not enough talent. There's not always enough capital, at least not this part of the world. And maybe there's not even the willingness of CEOs. I'm thinking of the complacency you're talking about, Michael. It's all really hard work, right? And it's really difficult. So you don't get a lot who want to do it. So are we now then back to we're relying on activists, or what is it? Special influencers? What is it takes to get to the next level? What makes us aware enough so that we actually create impact globally? And I want every one of you to chip in, and maybe we could start with Rune.
Did you say Rune?
Yes, please, Rune.
Okay. I think the most important part in terms of impact is actually building a very deliberate process. And I like the part that Michael mentioned about complacency, but something I really, really think is the cornerstone in building more impactful companies in the future that could turn into butterflies or unicorns or whatever we want to call them, but measured by the impact they actually produce instead of the capital they are able to attract on basis of EV values that are just put there in terms of ROI expectations and so forth, would be what I would be looking at. And I think that doing the same things as the others have been doing to get to the level of unicorn status won't be able to keep us producing new types of impactful companies. When Michael did his innovation, he was not a seasoned veteran in his game. He built it from his talent and up. He built something new in the world, right? So if you keep adding only talents from a very shallow pool, you end up being the Real Madrids, which is nice. They are a really strong team, but they are not the strongest team players because they are all these huge talents that really don't want to work together. So sometimes you create the talent yourself. And I think that's a European model more than a US model. Also more than a Chinese model, which is very different from that, right? They expect the talent to be like built from sheer hard work and even like overworking people in that sense. But like nurturing and creating talent is to me exactly the metaphor of the butterfly, right? Like the transformative power of bringing someone from the cube to actually becoming that butterfly. And sometimes the real talent is not the guy that did something 2 times already, because that guy might be the old guy. And we need some of the new guys there, right? And some of the real talents. We have a 13-year-old guy in my company. He's probably the biggest talent I ever saw within IT development, ever. And we found him by sheer accident, right?
Excellent. Rolf, you want to give it a go?
I'd like to follow up on that, and also on what Rune just said and what Michael was talking about, how complacency may actually be an obstacle to scaling companies out of Europe. I wanted to come across as optimistic, but not as complacent, because I totally agree with you that we should fear complacency like we fear death. And the best way really to combat that is to look at others who have done it. Getting back to your point, Camilla, about to what extent can we replicate this? When we look at the Nordic region, actually we have more unicorns per capita than any other region, any other country around the world outside of Silicon Valley. Now, getting back to your point, Michael, about the importance of recruiting people as you scale your company who have done it before, who've gone through the stages, who know what lies around the next corner and how to build and prepare for that. We have those available, and we can attract more. And increasingly, we're seeing the attractiveness in this region. Because, and part of that is because of this underlying conviction that we not only want to build high-value companies, we want for these companies to be mission-driven and to deliver impact. Now, whether the aspirations should remain to become unicorns, we'll leave that up for ongoing debate. I think what's the term that we've been using historically and still are is lighthouse companies that stand out from the crowd, that rise up above all other companies and throw light all around them and constitute beacons of success and sources of inspiration for paths for others to follow. And to really deliver impact long term, we need for the financial value creation that typically is measured in unicorn terms to merge with societal value, societal impact, whether it's fighting poverty or reducing pollution or recycling waste, whatever it is. And increasingly, we're seeing those two merge, which bodes well for the future, because then no longer can people say that in order to deliver impact, you have to sacrifice financial return. On the contrary, we're seeing more and more business models where delivering impact is how value is created. And it's those examples, it's those sources of inspirations, it's those lighthouse companies that we should put out there to lead the way.
All right. So, Michael, you were European originally, now you're a little bit more US based, right? And you know that in Europe we are very regulated by the EU, and I know you have very strong opinions about regulation. So let us hear, what do you think we should do? I mean, is regulation also a way? Because I've heard none of you talk about regulation.
So I think regulation is extremely important. So and it comes for a reason. And regulation, for example, regulation is important. If you look at, let's take Uber that Rune mentioned before. So taxi driving is regulated because you don't want someone to get killed in a car, and you don't want someone to end up in the wrong place, and you don't want someone to get scammed and all of this. And this regulation was probably created around the time of the car, so it's probably like 75 years ago, which is fine. Some of the solves in an Uber app is basically, we have GPS, we have identity logged into the app, we know where everyone are at the same time. So all of these things are kind of solved. And we have a price agreement that's also tied into the app. And I would say if the company had been slightly smarter, and I agree with Rune on that one, if they had been slightly smarter and also said, well, we can actually tax people better this way. We can actually ensure that the taxi driver pays tax, because now we work with the tax authorities and say, we're rolling this platform out, and now that will actually ensure it that way, then would have won this one, because they actually had probably 4 out of 5 regulatory solutions for an old problem that was solved in a better way, and they had it just around the corner to solve the 5th one, and had they solved that one as well, it would have been a clear win. And I think that's like Uber in Denmark, because that was one of the situations that we definitely saw that they made a mistake there. I think regulation is core to me as well on the financial scene, where it's there for a reason. We are regulating things because we identified problems over the last 50 and 100 years that we want to solve for. We want to protect people from getting scammed. We want to ensure that we can enforce if criminal activity happens, we can investigate it and so on. And this is just changing with technology. And that's basically what we're building in the company. We're enabling similar ways of regulating in a new financial ecosystem where you can still do prosecution, you can still follow the money, you can still ensure that terrorist financing is not happening, and all of these things. And that's just done through technology in a smart way. So yes, regulation is important, and I always believe that regulatory clarity creates industries. If you don't know what you have of regulation, you have a basically no one wants to invest, because tomorrow everything could change, and it's just like your foundation is gone. So I think that's there. Just like to throw one more thing in there, and I think
last little bit, Michael.
Last little bit, yeah. So it's just, I think one thing that's really core to me is I think a lot of responsibility lies on the shoulders of companies that becomes unicorns and grow from there. And it's basically, I see this as being the era of the companies, where the last 200 years was the era of the governments. And all the innovation, all the good stuff that will happen in the world is now on the shoulders of the companies, because they have the platform to be global. Countries don't. And we need to solve things from a global scale, whether it be climate change or whatever, we need to solve it that way. So it's a huge responsibility, and it's definitely on the shoulders of everyone running a company that's global.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael. And I'm going to give the floor now to Fabian for the last 1 minute and 50 seconds. And I'm going to say this is Fabian for the future. What is the way forward in the Nordics? Because this is, in fact, the Nordic FinTech moment session. What is, in your view, Fabian, the way forward for the Nordics right now in sustainability or impact, please?
Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of points have been made on the particular strengths of Europe and how to build up on these for the future. And I don't want to repeat any of those, although I agree with most of the points that were made. You know, I mean, from a very high level standpoint, the 2 points that I think are not only very relevant for the Nordics, but for Europe and even the world in general. If you think about not only building technologies that help us solve the problems, but also triggering behavioral change across different stakeholder groups, from consumers to managers, entrepreneurs, investors, all the way to politicians. Behavioral change is typically always preceded by mindset change. And essentially, the 2 points that I would like to make, which I think are of utmost importance to get right, is on the one hand side that I do not believe in the mid and long-term effectiveness of prohibition or of demanding sacrifice from say, the broad population out there. I'm not talking about a couple of thought leaders, but by and large. Yeah?
You got 20 seconds, please.
But I rather believe that we must get taxonomy right on the one hand side to set incentives around pricing of products, and that we simply must throw the better party. Products must be more attractive than the polluting, the destroying products.
So with the ending words, we must throw a better party. Maybe we should. And I want to thank every one of you, Fabian, Rune, Rolf, and Michael. Thank you for your excellent discussion. And thank you for the audience participating. And thank you for being here. And bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Great meeting you all. Have a good one.
Likewise. Good one. Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Bye, gentlemen.
This has been an incredible panel to follow. I love that you brought in everything from behavioral change to global and Nordic. Yeah, super, super good. Thank you so much.